So with that in mind, I'll hand over to you, Annette and Katie.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sean. Thank you for all that lovely introduction. And thank you for everyone who is here tonight. I'm just going to be interviewing. Interviewing sounds a little bit harsh. I'm just going to have a conversation with Katie. And Katie's going to share with us her testimony. Now, again, testimony is quite a formal way, but what she's going to do is share with us parts of her background and her thoughts and where she is at the moment. So that's really what I want to do, is actually just find out, because I'm a great believer in to getting to know somebody. Once you know about somebody, then you can actually understand that person and actually love that person as well. So that's where I'm coming from. So with tonight, it's not an interrogation or anything. It's just about finding out about Katie and just learning a little bit more about her. So Katie, good evening.
Good evening.
Hi. So anyway, what I'd like to do is, first of all, find out a little bit, talk about to you a little bit about your background, and just tell us a little bit about your childhood and your background.
Of course, yes. And thank you for everyone to join in and stuff. Hopefully my story can encourage some of you guys. So my background is, I grew up just in a sort of, I suppose you would call it a dysfunctional family. My father was murdered when I was 3 years old, and that was never really explained to me. So from a very young age, I grew up with a real sense of loss and hurt and rejection, just because I just didn't know why my dad was there for the first 3 years of my life and then taken away. And I didn't understand that, but I could feel it certainly within myself. My mum, she was in another relationship with a man who, they were kind of like military parents, you know. Me and my 3 siblings, we used to have to do all the chores, and you know, my parents weren't really like loving. They didn't really talk to us very much. So just the same with, you know, when I said I didn't really understand why my dad was taken away, no one ever sat me down and told me that. And growing up, you know, I never really had much guidance from my mum and my stepdad. I was just kind of left to do my own thing, and I was always, you know, having to do the chores, keep the house clean, you know. And I do actually remember a point in my life where me and my 3 siblings, we used to have to tidy the whole house, tidy all our room, and then literally stand at the end of the bed in high order until the room was inspected, everything was made sure it was kept in place, or we'd be grounded. And I also grew up in a Catholic family, so they weren't, I wouldn't say they were strongly religious or strongly Catholic. They certainly wouldn't denounce it, but we occasionally went to church, but it was mostly a kind of Christmas and Easter thing, especially Christmas. However, my mum, throughout my life, she's been quite ill. Before I was born, she was actually told she would never have children because she had real severe kidney disease, really severe epilepsy, quite a few different health conditions. So they told her she wouldn't be able to have children. 3 months later, 3 miracles later, she had us. Yeah, but she suffered quite a lot through her pregnancies and then after her pregnancies as well. So with each pregnancy, she actually got more ill. So actually, I took on the role of caring for my mum quite young. She would have really what's called grand mal seizures quite often growing up. I remember the first time I ever remember seeing something like that, you know. I just screamed. I just screamed because I didn't know what was happening. My mum was doing my hair for school, and then she just started having a seizure. And it was quite a scary thing to witness, but as I got older, I got used to it and used to caring for her and used to seeing these kind of things and used to going in and out of hospitals. So growing up, I actually I grew up quite quickly because I had to take on that role of caring for my mum. And my stepdad, who was there, he worked a lot, so he wasn't there. He wasn't really an active role in the family. And him and my mum had a really troubled relationship. And so there wasn't really a lot of love in the family or in the house or anything like that, you know, very staunch Catholics and just kind of keep yourself to yourself type thing, you know.
Yeah, thank you for that. But also, one of the things I like you to share with us is How did this also play out in your school, in your school, in your life at school as well?
Yeah, well, as I say, my parents' relationship were a bit troubled, and because of that, for some reason or other, they thought moving house would help them, so get a fresh start, that kind of thing. So we actually moved house. I would say nearly 20 times. I don't know the exact figure, but we moved house a lot. And I moved school 6 times, so 3 different primary schools and 3 different high schools. And that was really, really difficult because, you know, as I say, things weren't great at home. I was kind of looking after my parents, and I wasn't really getting the love and support that I needed from them. And then I was moving school all the time, so I was constantly having to go through that drastic change and get myself resettled and try and make new friends. And that was really difficult growing up. So by the time I got older, you know, I felt like I didn't actually have any friends because I hadn't been anywhere long enough to really get to know anybody. So that was quite difficult, that. And I hated it.
Yes, you also say that you left home as well fairly early. What prompted that to move away from home?
Yeah, so with my stepdad, he was quite an aggressive person, not physically violent, but verbally very violent, and he would kind of smash the house up, and his anger fueled my anger. So I grew up with a lot of anger, just because I wasn't getting love and support in the house, and also because they were quite angry people as well. So I grew up very angry, and so when my stepdad and I, when I was getting older, I was getting more and more you know, retaliating to his attitude, and you know, giving him as good as he gave me type thing. So when I got to the age of about 15 or 16, that became really intense, and you know, I just felt like I didn't have any sort of freedom or anything. I hated being in the house. I was so miserable, and I was just every time we had an argument or a fight, it would just blow up to something crazy, you know. And so one time I had been at work all day. I was trying to get my life sorted. It's when I just started work, actually, so I was about 16. And I was trying to get my first job, settled down. And it was after I'd come home from work one day. We had a huge fight, and he actually kicked me out of the house, said some pretty nasty things, and said, you know, it was nothing abnormal. So it wasn't like it was unusual for him to kick me out of the house, but that day I just thought, final straw for me, because I'm trying to work, I'm trying to have my own life, and I couldn't really do that there. So at that time, I went to my grand's house, and I got my own place at that point.
I mean, that is a very young age, and you're going through all this as well. And I mean, this is very painful. It's very difficult for you. But again, I want you to share, if you can, with everybody, how it affected you as well, because you are saying how physically it affected you as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I developed mental health issues, probably I would say around the age of 12 or 13. Which was at the most drastic moving stage. So my family actually, we lived in Scotland my whole life. And when I was 12, I'd just gone into high school and settled down with all my kind of best friends. My family decided that we were going to move to England. And that just destroyed me, because when I moved down there, I was so young. I didn't want to move away from my friends. Again, and I certainly didn't want to move country, because that was just too far. You know, it's one thing to move school, but it's another to move a country at that age. And when I moved to England, nobody could really understand me. In fact, I need to be cautious of this now. I have quite a strong accent, and I talk very quick, so hopefully everyone can understand what I'm saying. But when I lived there, nobody in my school could even understand what I was saying. So for about 6 months, I kind of just sat myself in the toilet cubicle at lunches and breaks, because I didn't have anyone. And so at that point, I would say at that point I started to self-harm, and it was really just a way of, you know, releasing everything that was inside of me. I had no other way to have any sort of release from that. So I started to cut myself. I started to cut my arms. And that sort of got worse and worse over the years as well, just because, you know, with all the stuff that went on in my house, you know, I thought when I was 16, what had actually happened that day that I got kicked out. My stepdad, obviously he knew from about 12, 13, I'd started to cut myself, and he knew it was a real problem. My arms were in a total mess, and the day that he kicked me out, he flung me out without any shoes on or tights or anything, and flung a Stanley blade at me and told me to go and, you know, cut myself properly. So, you know, that really hurt deep, because I thought, you know, this is something I'm struggling with, and I need support and help, but I didn't know how to word that at the time. I didn't understand that at the time. I just knew it was really hurt. It really hurt, you know, that I was struggling with this pain, and I blamed a lot of it on my parents. And so for my parents to actually encourage that and not help me, it just kind of broke me as a person, to be honest. I didn't have a clue. You know, I was just a total mess. I absolutely hated myself. I think all the anger that built up over time, and all the kind of pressure that I was having in my home life, it was just kind of building up, and I was getting no sort of relief from any of it. So cutting myself was a relief. But that only got worse over time, you know, because I became dependent on, you know, cutting myself and making my arms a mess. And then actually I got quite obsessed with the thought of suicide for a long time. And I genuinely just didn't want to be alive. I felt like I had no reason to live. I didn't have any friends. I felt like I didn't have any family. And I just hated myself, to be honest. I think I turned all that anger onto myself, and I just thought that I was worthless. You know, why was I alive? I didn't know why I had been brought into the world. My parents, I didn't feel like they loved me, and I didn't love them really at the time, I don't think. And I was just totally alone and young and confused, and I had no idea what life was. No one had ever explained things to me. I was just so confused and lost and blind.
Thank you for sharing that with us and walking us through all of that. That is so painful and so hard, but thank you for sharing that with us, because you'll get now into a teenager, you're becoming a teenager, we spoke about this before, and again, this is a really interesting point, because this all tells part of your journey, so to speak. But you know, when I read through and we talked about it, it's about your first love. Tell us a little bit about your first love, because that's really that really brought tears to my eyes.
Yeah, so there was technically two first loves, I suppose. The first one wasn't really a first love, I thought it was love. So when I was 14, while I was still at home, I met a guy, and he was a lot older than me at the time. He was 19 and I was 14. But we started a really serious relationship, and that just ended up a total repeat of my home life. You know, he was very verbally abusive and things like that as well. There was a lot of mistrust. And so I just thought that was normal. I thought a normal relationship was just fighting and arguing all the time, because I had just grown up with it. I'd seen that. And I didn't know anything different. So I was just as equally abusive and horrible, you know, in that relationship. So I probably couldn't have had a healthy relationship. But when I was 18 or 19, we broke up finally, thankfully. And I decided, no man, I'm just going to party, you know, have fun, because, you know, I'd been 14 when I got in the relationship. I didn't really go out and party and stuff. I felt like I'd missed out on all of that. So I decided to make up for it when I was 18. I got my own flat, and I decided to party every single weekend, you know, and get some friends around me. But that became, again, just something a crutch that I was leaning on, you know, just living for the weekend, living to get high and escape from reality. And I was getting really fed up of it, because, as I say, I had my own flat, and so it was every single weekend, from the Friday to the, you know, sometimes Monday, that people were in my house and drinking and smoking and just destroying it and not having any respect for me or my things. And I was just like, at the end of the day, when everybody goes home, it's me that's getting left to clean up all the crap. So I was a bit sick of that, and I was a bit sick of my friends, because they weren't really friends, you know, they were just happy that I had a house that they could party in. So it was around about that time I decided to break away from those people, and I just moved house and changed my number, started again like my family used to do. I just moved house, decided to start afresh. And so it was about when I was 18 or 19, I met who I would call my first love. He was called Rahman, and he was actually a Muslim. I just fancied the pants off him because he was very good looking. But, when he came into my life, you know, I was very interested in him. And he seemed like a very devout Muslim. And I was just so intrigued, because I'd never met, I'd met some Muslims before, but obviously not in a romantic way. I'd never really spent this much time with someone who was Muslim. So I was just so fascinated by his religion. He seemed quite into it. He seemed to know a lot of stuff, and he was absolutely certain that this was the path of life. He was absolutely certain that we're all Muslim, that, you know, everybody was born under Allah. He started to explain these things, that God created us all. And, you know, I'd heard this thing growing up in a Catholic school, in a Catholic background, but nothing ever really clicked with me. But at this point in my life, obviously I was just totally broken and a mess, you know, as you can imagine. I was still very, very confused. And when he started to speak to me about his God, I just thought to myself, you know, I've experienced real evil in my life. I believed evil was a real thing, and I couldn't explain it as, you know, just actions or people doing evil things, but I actually believed that evil was real and it was an actual thing. And I started to see a lot of, you know, well, I always grew up with a lot of spirituality, so I'd seen kind of satanic things, and I'd seen all this, I was right into symbolism, you know, and I started to see quite a lot of mainstream symbolism that pointed towards Satanism. And, you know, it just clicked to me when he was talking to me about God, and I was seeing all this stuff around me. I was just like, God must be real. It really must be real. And so I took an interest at that point in Islam, and I thought, you know, I needed answers in my life. I needed some sort of clarity and some sort of direction, because I had none of that. I was absolutely lost and confused. And so when I started to think, okay, well, God wants us to be like this, and God created us, and this is my reason, and this is my purpose, I started to really believe that, and I started to really take it seriously, because I wanted to be living in truth. I wanted to be living with meaning, which I had none. So Islam was the route that I went for a while.
Yeah. So what would you say was your turning point?
Yes.
In that respect, because obviously you've had, you know, brought up in a Catholic background, and also having a Muslim boyfriend. What changed in your life? What changed?
Okay, so I was going through all of that, obviously trying to figure things out, and Islam made sense, because obviously I knew Catholicism, I knew the religious structures, I knew there's a kind of hierarchical system, so similar to Catholicism as Islam, you know, just very religious structure. And so I knew that I had to be a good person. I knew I had to not sin. I knew, you know, I used to go to confession in the Catholic Church on Sundays, and it was just the same. You had the same kind of rituals in Islam. So, you know, I was just like, okay, this is what I need to do. This is how I need to be living my life, and blah, 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 blah. It was all about me and what I was doing and how to live life. And, you know, it was all about me figuring it out for myself, basically. And I was just trying my hardest, I suppose, but things were still really difficult. As I had kind of mentioned before, I just felt things were building up, and I had no relief in my life. I had no sort of answers. I was just trying to figure it out the best way I can, and just deal with all of this stuff and try not to think about it. It was a real hard balance. And so I was working in a law firm at that time. Do not know how I managed to keep a job down with all this. Thank God, you know, thank God I got there, because my friend Sean Keoli, he seen on Facebook, actually, when I went to the mosque, they asked me, oh, can we video you taking your little testament of faith to Islam? And I did not think anything of that at the time. I was like, yeah, all right, okay, you put it on your wee Facebook page. I had no idea that this was the central mosque for the whole of Glasgow. Quite how big that was. I didn't think. I just honestly didn't think. So, you know, within like a few hours of me doing that, I wasn't even online. I just went away to go and do my own thing until I got a phone call from my mum, like, what have you done? Because I never told her. She wasn't really involved in my life in that way, so I didn't tell her I went to a mosque to take a testament of faith to Islam. So she was very concerned about that, and she was like totally worried on the phone. What have you done? And I was like, how do you know this? And she's like, I seen your video on Facebook. So it turns out that this video of me taking a testament of faith to Islam had been posted on Facebook, and within like a couple of hours it got thousands and thousands of views by all these people, including everyone on my Facebook list. So I felt quite exposed. And, you know, my friend Sean, he's seen it, but, you know, I thought, I was like, okay, fine, it is what it is. You know, I was quite serious about it, so I didn't think too much about it being on there. I was just a bit upset that I hadn't got the chance to tell my family first. But it was a personal journey, so I didn't really even see the need. And so I think that was the video perhaps that Sean seen, or something else I'd maybe posted on Facebook. And so he reached out to me to basically ask me about Islam. Obviously, he was a Christian, and I think he tried to speak to me in my work before, but I was just all over the place, and I probably I was like, who is this God freak? Not really interested. I guess it just had to happen the way it happened, you know. I wasn't ready for it at that time, but he reached out to me again at this point and started to ask me about Islam. So obviously I was quite serious about it, and I wanted to talk to him more about it. But, you know, as well as my spiritual journey happening, there was physical things happening as well. I was moving house. Actually had a major spine operation when I was 15. And I'm still really struggling with that. During the winter, especially when I got cold, I have metal all the way down my spine. So when I got cold, my body would just tense around this metal. I could really feel it. Ever since I had the surgery, my movement was restricted. I could barely lift my hands above my head. My neck, I could barely move. I was struggling to walk. You know, I honestly felt like I was going to end up in a wheelchair eventually. And anyway, all this was happening, and Sean and I are back and forth, and I don't know if any of you talk to Sean, you know his emails are like small journal books, you know. So, you know, I was always trying to kind of reply to everything he said and read it and make sure I was getting all the points. And, you know, just with everything that was happening externally, I was moving house and I was up at the hospital and just going back and forth everywhere. And I was kind of between like 3 houses at this point, so it was just a mess in my life. And it got to the point where I think I had written out a big long email to Sean, and I can say for whatever reason, I think God maybe deleted it from my drafts because it just totally disappeared. And I was searching for it, and I was gutted that I hadn't copied the text because I had written so much, and it was really hard to sit and think about things, you know. So I said to Sean, let's just meet up, we'll have a coffee, we'll meet up, you know. And I didn't think anything about it, to be honest. I thought I was going to go that day and convert him to Islam because I thought it was the truth, you know. I really thought, okay, I've found the answers here, I found what I've been looking for, I found what life is all about. But yes.
Well, sorry, I was going to ask you, as a work colleague, how did you, it's really interesting how you viewed Sean. What was he there for? I mean, obviously as a work colleague, he was there, you're working together, but having Sean in the office, how did that feel for you?
Well, actually, Sean and I worked in different offices, so it was very rare that we even met each other. I do remember the first time I ever met Sean, and my gosh, that day I went home with a migraine because he was talking to me about go-karting, and my goodness, I had no idea someone could know so much about one subject. Like, this guy knew everything about go-karting. And I just went home that day going, I think I could take a test on go-karting. Answer it correctly. I just couldn't believe it. You know, he spoke a lot and he just seemed to know so much. He was just like a fountain of wisdom. But to be honest, I wasn't that interested in go-karting. I thought it was interesting, and we actually all went up going, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was good, but I just was blown away by how much he knew. I thought he really loves go-karting. I thought this is his life, you know. Just turns out he knows a lot. So yeah, I just knew Sean was very wise. I just seen him as like, I don't know how I viewed people that were older than me at that age. I didn't have a lot of time to think about them, to be honest. I didn't have a lot of time to think about his character or anything like that, but I just knew that, you know, he could talk and that he was very intelligent, but he was always very nice to me. That's the thing, he was always really quite genuine and nice, you know. I've worked with people before who have been quite you know, you just get a bad vibe, or you know, you could tell they're being flirty or something like that, but none of that, you know, with Sean at all. I just felt quite comfortable around him, you know. I didn't even take too much notice of him because he was just that you know, comfy to be around and stuff like that. But it wasn't too many times that we did spend with each other.
But the thing is, well, having that influence or having Sean there, how did that impact on you? I mean, how what made you change? What was making changes in your life as a result of
After I spoke to Sean, or just when we were
well,
working?
in general, I mean, you know, because obviously, you know, things have been, up until that time, things have been very stressful, very difficult. Your life journey was quite difficult. But then, did you feel that there was any changes coming into your life at the time?
Well, yeah, there was definitely a lot of changes. It's only in retrospect I can see that, you know, I can see everything that was going on. At the time, my life was just such a whirlwind, and I really couldn't take notice of a lot of things. My head was just constantly in the clouds. And actually, I was a little bit skeptical when Sean first started to reach out to me. I was just a bit skeptical of everybody. I didn't trust anybody, and especially, I suppose, older male figures I didn't trust. So when he actually started to reach out to me, I was just kind of like, what does he want? And just the messages that he was sending me was about God and stuff like that. You know, it wasn't anything that I was used to. It was definitely not normal conversations that I'd ever had with anyone. So I was very intrigued and I wanted to speak to him. I honestly felt embarrassed sometimes because his emails were so long and eloquent, and I thought I've just said a pure garble back to him, and he must. Why does he even email me?
Yeah. But that was so lovely that, you know, that happened. So as a result of that, now, when would you say the critical point when you actually acknowledge that Jesus is in your life, God is in your life, and accepted God as in that way?
Yeah, I would say the day that I met Sean, when we agreed via email to meet, because clearly emails were not working for me. We met at the coffee shop, and we'd planned to go to a coffee shop, have a wee coffee and a chit chat, and then maybe even go and visit some mosques that day. We sat in Costa Coffee, I think it was, or Starbucks it was, for about 8 hours that first meeting. And I don't know, I was just like, as I kind of mentioned, you know, this life I was living was just so confused. I had no direction. I was just here, there, and everywhere. You know, I finally thought, I'm getting on my feet, I'm getting answers. You know, I'm living the right life now. I'm putting the old life behind me. But when I met Sean, all of that was just blown off the water. I mean, one of the first things he said to me was, right, just put religion off the table, take everything off the table, you know, and just look at God's word and God. And I was just very confused by that, because, you know, I've always looked to religious structures, to a priest, or, you know, other people. Obviously I was listening to Sean because I knew he was older, and I knew he obviously knew stuff about this. But that day, you know, I was calling myself a Muslim. I had actually taken the Testament of Faith. So I was a Muslim. And, you know, that day, as I'd said before, I was just like, all what I was doing, figuring life out, getting my head straight, getting on the right religion, getting on the right path, doing the right thing, being a good person. But actually, you know, Sean spoke to me that day, and all of that was just totally gone. He was just talking about a God who came in the flesh, who was a person, and who wanted a relationship with me. And it wasn't like, you know, a slave master relationship like Allah in Muhammad, you know, who you just had to do all these things, just the same as Catholicism. He was actually talking about Jesus, who had came and lived a normal human life, and died a horrific death, and struggled just like us, and went hungry just like us, and had sleepless nights just like us. And, you know, not only that, but that he knew me, you know, that he actually knew me personally. And that's what changed me, actually. That's what I just changed intrinsically. That day was just like, you know, that's the day I felt relief. That's the day I felt I genuinely had an answer. You know, when I compare that to Islam, because I'd said the same things, you know, I felt like I had the answers and I was on the right path. You know, actually I didn't feel that in my soul. I felt it in my head. I thought in my head, right, I'm doing the right thing, I'm making the right decisions. It was all very you know, mind over matter type stuff. And then, you know, I spoke to Sean, and he was like, it's not about you, it's not about what you do, you know, and that's actually about what Jesus has done and who he is. And, you know, that just blew me away, because, you know, I was just a mess. I was like, well, I've done all this stuff, and I'm religious, I'm trying hard, and I didn't have to do that, you know. Actually, he's done it for me. And I think I actually said to Sean that day before I went home on the train, I don't think I could call myself a Muslim anymore. And genuinely, I just went home with just so many answers, and I started to speak to the guy I was actually engaged to at the time, the Muslim guy. I was engaged to him, and I went home and started to talk to him about Jesus, and that's when the friction started between us, and he was starting to question me, like, so what are you Catholic or a Christian now or whatever. I was confused, because I was like, no, I think I'm still a Muslim, I'm not really sure. So it took maybe, I'd say, about a week, because since that day Sean has just not let me go. He literally has just adopted me. As you know, I think, and I'd say he's my church father. And you know, this was such a major thing for me, because as I say, I didn't really trust a lot of people, and you know, Sean was the first person to actually come into my life who just wanted to help me, who just wanted to speak to me and tell me things that I should know, that I should have been told, that, you know, what life really is. He was giving me literal life, you know. I had none of that inside me. I felt changed from that day, and he just kind of took my hand and walked me the rest of the way. Still is.
Katie, I can just feel the lovely joy and love of God and feel within you while you're telling this story, and it's absolutely fantastic. But I think I'm just going to ask you a little bit more about, now that you have had that change, now that, how does it feel for you? How did it, first of all, two questions. How did it feel after you accepted God? How did it feel for you? You know, once you said, right, okay, this is what, you know, I feel this is really what is happening in my life.
Yeah.
How did it feel for you?
Oh, literally, it was like I was given, you know, new life. You know, I know it's obviously using the Christian terms to say reborn and stuff like that, but I can say that I felt that, you know. Maybe some people not sure when they became a Christian and stuff like that. You know, I can remember it as clear as day. I remember that day. I remember the day that me and Sean sat in his house, and it was on Halloween night, actually. I sat and said the prayer to Jesus, and we drew the line in the sand, and that was it, you know. And you know, I was just so changed, and I just felt joy. So for the first time in my life, actually, I felt joy, because I felt, I guess I felt like someone knew me. I felt like someone knew me and wanted to know me, and I had never experienced that before. I'd never experienced a relationship that was built on love. I'd never experienced, you know, an actual parental figure, and Sean really became that for me. He really became a father figure for me, because I didn't have a father figure in my life, and the father figure that I did have was more interested in relationships with other women, and you know, doing his own thing, not interested in us in our life. And Sean stepped into my life, and it was like a father telling his child, right, listen, this is what's right, and this is what's wrong, and actually, you know, forget all that stuff, it's not important, and look at this, what is important. And that just really made such an impact in my life, because, you know, it was at that time that I could really start to see things clearly. I really started to get my feet on the ground, you know, and goodness, Sean spoke some pictures over me, you know, like being a tree, you know, rooted, and I didn't see any of that at the time, but I'm starting to see it now, you know. I felt the transformation, because when Sean, I don't know, obviously you guys know Sean, and you know how much he's just for Christ, and you know, when we met, he was very much for praying, and no one had ever prayed for me. I didn't even know what prayer was. He prayed, and really I had the Holy Spirit, and for the first 2 or 3 weeks, I would say, I don't think the Spirit left me at all, you know. I was just constantly filled, and I just knew, wow, this is it, you know. This is it, and nothing is ever going to get me away from this, because this is the truth, this is the life, you know. And it wasn't like Islam, it was like actual truth.
Yeah. And the other thing, as I said, you know, I don't want to keep you, you know, you've been very, very, very lovely, and I've enjoyed talking to you. But my last thing is that during COVID, we're all in lockdown now, and things are really, really, you know, for everybody, we're all facing different things. How has your life and your faith helped you through this period?
Yeah, massively. I don't think I could have gotten through it without God. And you know what, actually, it's not even that I have been more, spending more time with God or reading the scriptures more. It's not even that at all. It's that I've actually just been a bit of a mess, because I didn't really know what about lockdown and stuff like that. In the beginning I was like reading Psalm 91, I think it was, that no disease will touch me, and
Wow.
10,000 may fall by your right side and 1,000 by your right side, but nothing will harm you. So I was really standing strong in that. And then I got ill, and I was like, oh gosh. But I was fine. I'm fine now. And spending so much time in the house, it was been really quite frustrating, because I'm engaged again now to a Christian man, and oh my goodness, like, he just wanted to play his games all day, and I just wanted to sit in the room and read, but I was just getting so bored. And actually my mental health kind of flared up. It's still something that I'm dealing with now, but you know what, I can actually say I think God has set me free just during this lockdown, because I was getting kind of in my head a lot. I was just getting carried away with things and letting my emotions rule me rather than letting truth rule me. And it was just actually when I was cleaning up one day, I was cleaning the house, and God literally just spoke to me, and he said, I'm with you every step of the way. And obviously that was just those words he said to me, but that just like blew up inside my mind, because I don't know, I was just seeing me doing my Bible studies and my word, that was my time with God. And I was just blown away, because it was this time I was doing cleaning. And he actually said, I'm with you every step of the way. And obviously I was struggling a little bit in my head, and my family is still as crazy and dysfunctional as it's always been, if not more so. And I get quite emotionally invested into my family, so when they're having problems, it's my problem. When they're upset, I'm upset. When they're angry, I'm angry. It was a bad thing. It was like I couldn't spend too much time with them. I couldn't really support them because their bad vibes were coming off on me and affecting me. And so in that moment when God said, I'm with you every step of the way, what I heard was that I'm available every single minute. It's not just when you're having this time with me, I'm walking with you every single second. I'm never away from you. And I also just it became clear to me in that moment of revelation that I'm actually letting all these external things influence how I'm feeling about myself and how I'm feeling just in general. I'm sad because my family's sad, or I've read something sad in the news, and God just showed me like how that's been really affecting my mind and making me, I suppose, worse in my mental health. And from that moment when he said, I'm with you every step of the way, I kind of knew that, but when he actually revealed it to me, I just really realized quite what that meant, and the fact that I should be letting God influence me every single step of the way, not letting my family and not letting anybody else. So wow, God has been so good to me during this lockdown, and he's I would say our relationship is just, it's went to that next level, and I'm just so grateful. I'm really feeling grateful now. I'm grateful for the lockdown because I have had more time to spend with God and study scripture, and also just work on my own mental health issues as well. But I really say that I've not felt the way I used to feel, and I don't think I could feel like that again, because it was literally a 1 second revelation, a 1 second download from God, which has just changed me in that moment. So I just thank God for that, and I'm grateful for COVID, but obviously still trying to be careful like everybody else.
Yes, so thank you very much indeed. And one of the things is that when we all, I think this is something for us all, when we look back during our time of lockdown, during the COVID times, what will we be saying? What questions will we be saying? What were we doing? What did come out of COVID? And there's lots of things that can come out of COVID. So I'm actually going to now start winding things up, and I'm going to say, is anybody wanting to ask Katie any questions? Anyone? No?
Well, I do. I've got a question.
Okay.
I've always got.
You should do everything by now, Sean.
Well, I know, but I don't know if everybody else knows. I wanted to ask actually 2 questions because I'm just greedy like that. One, could you elaborate a bit more about your back? You
Yes,
spoke
sorry.
about that earlier on. No, that's fine. And the second thing, could you elaborate a little bit more about how Christ is impacting your family through you at the moment?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry,
Cool.
I wrote so much of my
No.
testimony, but when it comes to actually talking about it, you miss so much. But yeah, my back, I would say that's one of the most profound things that's happened in my life. It's caused the most major change for me. As I briefly mentioned, I had a spine operation. Basically, I had two curves in my spine, so my spine literally looked like an S shape rather than the kind of straight up and down as it's meant to be. And so I had two operations, about 10, 11 hours each, and I had metal rods and screws inserted all the way the length of my spine. And so after, I had to learn to walk again. I was in hospital for about a month. I missed loads and loads of school, which was actually something I enjoyed. But anyway, not the being ill in bed part, though. I couldn't really do much for myself for a while. I had to learn to walk again. Really struggled before I had my operation. I was right into football and athletics and gymnastics, so my life got totally turned upside down. I just felt like I couldn't do those things anymore after the spine operation. And actually for about, in fact, years, right up until what I'm about to tell you, I actually regretted getting the surgery. I said to myself, I'd rather just have had the curvature, because then I still have all the movement that I've not got now. You know, I wouldn't have all this pain. Maybe I did look a bit disformed. My shoulders were different lengths, and I kind of walked funny and stood funny. But you know, I would have rathered that than the pain that I was constantly in. I lived on the strongest dose of Cocodamol that you can get. I was taking that as often as I could just to keep the pain at bay. And it was really ruining my life, actually. You know, I was struggling to go to work all the time. I was always up at the hospital. I couldn't sit at my desk all day. It was just impacting every single area of my life. During the winter, I was just totally a mess, could barely do anything. And so when I was first getting to know Sean, as I said, and I was kind of emailing him back and forth and in and out of the hospital, he knew, you know, that I'd been having time off work and had to get a special chair and different things like that. So he kind of knew a bit about my spine. And so anyway, I'd met up with Sean, and then he invited me to come after a week or two to go to a 20s weekend that his church was holding. And I was meant to go on the Friday, and on the Thursday night, before I was due to leave the next morning, it was on the floor, a total stiff mess. I couldn't move. I was just in so much pain, like Sean, you'll remember. I phoned Sean just to tell him, like, I'm not coming through this weekend. I will not make it. I need to go to the hospital. And he was like offering to come through and take me to the hospital and stuff. And obviously we didn't live near each other at all. And I was like, no, I need an ambulance. Like, that's how bad it was. I hadn't even felt this much pain during the surgery or after it. This was the peak of my pain about 5 years later. At that point, Sean said, can I pray for you? And honestly, to be honest, I was in that much pain. I just wanted him off the phone. So I said, yeah. And I didn't even really, as I said, nobody had prayed for me. And I didn't know what prayer even was, to be honest. And Sean just started praying, and you know, Sean has really powerful and long prayers, and I think it was only about maybe 30 seconds in, and I was lying literally prostrate on my bathroom floor. I couldn't move anywhere, and I hadn't been able to lift my arms above my head for about, I'd say, months and months. I could barely move my neck, and walking was really difficult. And Sean, as he started to pray, as I say, all this came from my spine. And so the centre of my spine, where all the metalwork was, I could feel that all my body was tensed up around. As he was praying, I just felt like a warm, tingling feeling from that very centre where the pain was all emanating from. And it just moved gradually out my body, this warm, tingling sensation. And never experienced that in my life. And from that very second, I was just completely healed. I stood up and I put my arms above my head, and he was still on the phone praying. And I was like waving my hands about, like moving my head, and I didn't really know what had happened. I couldn't believe it. I suppose I just expected that as well, because I was like interrupting Sean's prayer. I was like, oh, you know, it worked, thanks. And just kind of hung up on him. And I was like, I'll see you tomorrow then. Thank you, goodbye. I was so tired. I'd been in pain and up for ages, so I was very tired. The next again day, in fact, I remember the comment you made to me, Sean. He met me at the train station. We were walking down Princess Street, and he was just like, you're walking so fast, I can't keep up with you, you know. And it was just, I was totally set free. And from that day, from that moment he prayed for me, I've never taken a painkiller for my back pain. I've never ever had back pain. I've just been totally set free from it. You know, I've got all my movement just like I did before. And And yeah, I just, oh my goodness, that totally changed my life. That totally changed my life. You know, set me free from pain and prescription tablets and all of that sort of stuff, and helped me have, I guess, relief from the actual physical pain in my body to then focus on other things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And your other question, Sean?
Sorry, what was the other question, Sean?
Sean, yes.
The other question was how is Jesus impacting your family at the moment through you?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
So, just like Sean, I became a total Jesus freak very quickly, and we actually called ourselves that, Jesus freaks, and you know, we're very loved the fact. And so my family just, because I had gone to Islam first and then went to came to Christ, my family just thought, this is just another thing she's doing. This is just another phase Katie's going through. And my cousin actually said to me, do not come to my house as a Jehovah's Witness, I swear. And I was like, okay. And so I knew in myself that, right, I've actually found Christ, I've found God. So I knew that I wasn't going to change, but I just let them have their jokes. And my gran, goodness, obviously she's the oldest person in the family. She's like the glue that holds us all together. But she is an absolute crazy person, and she's quite aggressive and nasty at times, but it's in her own quirky way. That what she does, and I have no idea why she does this, but say for instance my mum is there with her, and then there's some other people like cousins and, you know, maybe even her brother or something, and she'll just start being really, really nasty to one person. And so usually when I was there, it was me that was getting it, and oh, you Jesus freak, this and that, you know, whatever I was getting called, you know, and I just laughed it off. But it didn't stop me from telling my gran about Jesus, because, you know, I could see her getting older and she's not as able as she used to be. Still quite able, but not as much. And she went through quite a major operation as well, and I was caring for her at that time during the operation. And actually they told her she might have to get like a permanent stoma bag. So I don't know if you know what that is, but basically it's like a bag that your intestine gets pulled out of your body and you do the toilet in a bag. So they told her she might have to get that permanently, but they wouldn't know until they actually done the surgery. So they marked her at both sides. They says, we'll try and give you the temporary bag, but we, you know, don't get your hopes up, because it's looking like you're going to have to get one for the rest of your life. She was very worried about that and didn't want it at all, didn't want to get one for the rest of her life. My mum has one for the rest of her life. And so me, and I got my sister and my niece, who was only about 4 at the time, or 5. I said, just everyone put your hand on Nana's tummy and we'll all pray for her. And that was the first time I'd ever really prayed in front of my family, I think. Well, maybe not, but I think it was the first time I'd prayed in front of my sister anyway. So she was kind of looking at me strange, you know. We were in the hospital and my grandma was lying in bed. There was other people around, so she's like really mortified that I'm praying. And I've got my niece with her hand on praying as well. I'm just saying, Jesus, please don't let my gran have this permanent bag. So, amen, praise God, he answered that, and she came out with the temporary bag, got it reversed a while after. So there was that healing for my gran, and a few others. She used to suffer really severe panic attacks, and I mean, she would walk the floors at night screaming and crying, really, really horrific to watch, actually, because you just can't help them in that state. So I was staying with my gran one night, and she was having one of these horrific panic attacks, you know, screaming, crying, and it was only me there. So I didn't really know what to do. I was like, I'm just going to pray. So I just started to pray. And literally from that day on, my gran's never had a panic attack. So I had to keep reminding her, you know, remember you used to have those panic attacks and you don't anymore because Jesus healed you. Oh, aye. And I used to always tell her, I was right into like end times revelations and eschatology and things like that. So I used to tell my gran all the time that Jesus is coming back. Jesus is coming back. I'd tell her all the time. And aye, whatever, it would be a response. And then one day somebody met her on the street, or she met someone on the street, and they told her about Jesus and told her about, you know, Jesus coming back. She phoned me that night and she was like, Katie, Jesus is coming back. And I was like, I know, I've been telling you that. So it was really funny. And then after that, she went on holiday. She started to buy herself cross necklaces, and then she started to pray. So my gran actually has given her life to Jesus. She's never
wonderful.
explicitly said those words, but she buys crosses all the time now. You know, she's got Jesus pictures in our house, and she's always praying. And I even have bought her the Bible and things like that. My 8-year-old niece, oh, she's 8 now. So the niece that I was telling you about, who I got to lay the hands on, she has just came to Christ like literally a few weeks ago. So when she was about 4 and 5, I took her to my church in the summer, because we had these week-long summer camps, and it was all about God, and we were teaching them all of these Bible stories the whole week. She hated it. She hated every minute because it was just too long for her. She'd never been in school at that point. She was too young. She was actually too young to go to the group, but it's because I was there she was allowed. So the whole time I just thought, oh, I was really disappointed, because I thought, you know, oh, she's not really taking any of this in. I wish she was enjoying it more. But actually, I do remember during that time she had a dream about Jesus, and then came to church one day and told everyone about her dream about Jesus, and I was so excited. And so recently her family, like her mum and stuff, my sister, have been going through a bit of troubles. So she's been staying at my house with me a lot. And I've just been telling her, just like I did do with all my family, my gran, just talking about Jesus all the time, and just answering all her questions, because she's got questions of her own too. She's young, and you know, I just love to talk to her, because no one talked to me as a child, you know, to tell me things. And you know, she asked me, we were talking about prayer, and then she asked me about the prayer to ask Jesus to come into your heart. So I explained it to her and explained why we had to do that, and why Jesus died, you know, all of that. I just explained it to her, didn't think much else of it. So we came home that night, blah, 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 went to bed. And when I woke up the next morning, the first thing Lee Rose said, which is her name, by the way, Lee Rose said to me, Auntie Katie, I said the prayer to ask Jesus into my life last night, or into my heart or something, she said, and I just was totally blown away. I really started crying. I was like, oh my goodness. And I said, did you feel God come into your heart? And she said, yeah. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then literally a few days later, when we were at the park, just out of absolute nowhere, she said that she wanted to get baptized. And I was just like, that is just unbelievable. That is amazing. And I'm just absolutely praising and thanking God for that, because I know he's going to use that girl to save her family too. And also my cousin Lucy, I don't know if you know this, Sean, actually, or maybe you do, but my cousin Lucy recently, again, been having troubles. She's from Galashiels, borders of Scotland, between Scotland and England. She was having some trouble with girls there, so she moved up to Glasgow, and so obviously I tried to kind of support her a little bit and pray for her and talk to her about Jesus as well. And she came to church with me one day, and she told me, like, I got my pastors and stuff prayed for her. And then at that point, she just started, all of a sudden I seen her with the crosses, and then on her phone there was a cross, and she started to pray and send me music videos of Christian songs and stuff, and we started to share that. And she started to say that she believed. And then she told me that when the pastor had prayed for her, she really felt something at that moment. So she's given her life to Christ as well. And it's just amazing.
Wonderful. Bless you. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. It's absolutely fabulous. You know, I can talk to you hours and hours and hours, but I think I think the thing that we can do now is to say thank you very much for sharing your testimony with us. And if Sean would like to finish the recording, end the recording now, and then we will pray for you as well, and pray for your future.